So today we're diving into 1 Kings 4. And look, I know what you might be thinking. It looks like a really dry list of ancient names. But trust me, we're going to uncover how this chapter is actually an absolute masterclass in leadership, hidden political dynamics, and theological foresight. If you've ever just kind of skimmed past these verses, well, you are in for a seriously fascinating journey today.
All right, let's just jump right in and challenge a pretty common assumption right off the bat. We so often think of wisdom as, a feeling, a mood, or maybe some deep philosophical thought. But the text here shows us something radically different. True wisdom actually has architecture. It manifests as a highly sustainable structure. Basically, real wisdom builds things that actually last.
And the author is incredibly purposeful in setting the stage for us here. When the text says, King Solomon was king over all Israel, and these were his high officials, it's sending a massive signal. It's telling us that the absolute clearest evidence of Solomon's legendary wisdom wasn't actually his poetry. Nope, it was the visible, incredibly intelligent order of his entire kingdom. So rather than getting totally lost in what feels like a chaotic list of 23 random names, let's break this down. We can organize this data into 3 distinct leadership layers within the royal court. First up, we've got the spiritual authority, which is led by the priests. Then you have the royal administration. That's your scribes, the recorder, and the palace chief. And finally, the national infrastructure, anchored by the military commander, the labor overseer, and the district governors. It is a fully functioning, highly organized government machine.
Now, when we look a little closer at these officials, a really clear pattern emerges. You see, true wisdom distributes responsibility. It doesn't hoard it. Just look at the characteristics at play here. These leaders brought proven trustworthiness and highly specialized competence to the table. Plus, there's loyalty built through real proximity, like Zabud, whose actual literal title was the king's friend. There's even relational integration, with some governors marrying into the royal family to really lock in those covenant bonds.
At the very foundation of this entire system were 12 regional district governors, and their job? Each one was responsible for systematically supplying provisions for the royal household for exactly 1 month out of the year. I mean, think about that. It's a brilliant piece of delegation. It wasn't just haphazard taxation. It was this rhythmic, highly predictable structure that perfectly sustained the kingdom, all without exhausting any single region at one time.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. Let's look at the Hebrew lexical engine that's actually driving the text here. There's this highly unusual pattern where several governors are listed just by the prefix ben, which means son of, followed by their father's name. And guys, this is not just some quirky translation issue. It's a profound cultural marker.
See, in ancient Hebrew culture, this title proved these were definitely not self-appointed men. These were leaders whose character was entirely validated through generational witness. That title, son of, implies continuity, legitimacy, and a really deep covenant identity. They didn't just grab power, it was entrusted to them because their lineage literally proved their reliability.
Section 1, Hidden Patterns and Redemptive Warnings.
But here's the catch. When you look just beneath the surface of all this amazing structure, you start to spot the dangerous seeds of future destruction. The first hidden pattern we see is that these new administrative districts, they didn't match the traditional tribal boundaries at all. Solomon essentially rewired the entire map of Israel, weakening those old tribal loyalties just to consolidate royal authority. And sure, it was a totally genius move for temporary unity, but man, it was a massive risk for later division. And then there's the Judah exemption. If you carefully comb through that list of the 12 districts, Solomon's own tribe, Judah, is just glaringly missing. They seem to be entirely exempt from supplying provisions and labor. And that right there is a huge redemptive warning to us. Preferential systems, they eventually fracture kingdoms. In fact, if we look ahead to 1 Kings 12, history shows us that this exact favoritism is what literally tears the nation in half down the line.
You'll also notice that all economic life flowed directly toward the throne. Basically, where the king is, the resources gather. And check out the sequence in Scripture here. Right after this intensely detailed structural list, the text immediately describes immense national abundance. It's leaving us with a profound theological echo. Order is the absolute precondition for blessing.
Section 2. The Christological Lens and a Greater Kingdom.
So, all of this really brings us to the stark realization that human wisdom just cannot permanently secure a kingdom. Let's look at the massive divergences between Solomon's temporary earthly administration and Christ's. Solomon organized officers to distribute the workload, right? But Christ appointed apostles. Solomon united the tribes, but he did it through heavy taxation. Christ, on the other hand, unites humanity entirely through grace.
He actually feeds his people with himself rather than depleting them. It's a total paradigm shift.
Now, I want to pivot from ancient national infrastructure straight into your own life. Consider this. It is so easy to have a grand vision, right? Just like it's easy to draw a beautiful building on a piece of paper. But a truly brilliant architect isn't proven by the drawings. They're proven by whether the building actually stands when the wind starts blowing. Solomon's cabinet wasn't just a list. It was the actual physical scaffolding that held up national peace.
And honestly, your own life is only going to flourish when you intentionally build structures. We have to organize our days with spirit-shaped wisdom rather than just relying on abstract, fleeting feelings. If we learn anything at all from 1 Kings 4, it is that wisdom is highly, highly practical. Look, if you want peace, if you want true flourishing in your life, you can't just cross your fingers and hope for a good mood. You actually have to build the internal systems. You know, the daily habits, the trusted relationships, the disciplines. That's what actually sustains it.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a hard look at your own inner court. Look at the cabinet running your own mind. When you face a crisis today, or honestly, even just a normal Tuesday afternoon, who is sitting at the head of the table making the call? Is it impulse? Is it fear? Or have you appointed spirit-shaped wisdom to actually govern your life? Take some time to evaluate your own architecture today. What kind of kingdom are you really building?